Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We will start the program with Aruna Ramanan and Ramkumar Sankaran. We'll start with Arunachala Akshamalai. Aruna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Taruna Runamani Kiranavali Nigatarumaksharamana Mahirmalai.
Tirunadiya Tiruvadiya Tirumal Teliya Paravudal Purulaga
Karuna Karamuni Ramanariyanuva Kaina Harcholiyad Gadiyaga
Arunachalamena Ahame Alvar Siva Muga Alvare
Arunachalavaraketra Aksharamana Malishatra Karuna Karaganapatiye Karamarulika Paye Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala
Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala
Arunachalam yana ahame ninaipavar ahatai verarupai Arunachala
Aழகு சுந்தரம் போல் அகமும் நீயும் கடினமாயிரு போமனாச்சலா
Aham bundirtu vannaha guhai shirayai amarvitadan kol Arunachala
ஆறு காரணையாண்டனையகற்றிடு அகிலம் பழித்தடும் அருணாச்சலா
இப்பழித்த புன்னை ஏன் நினைப்பித்தாய் இனி யார் விடுவார் Arunachala
ஈன்றிடும் அன்னை பெரிதருள் புரிவோர் இதுவோ உனதருள் அருணாச்சலா
உன்னையே மாற்றி ஓடாதுள்ளத்தின் மேல் உறுதியாயிருப்பாய் Arunachala
சுற்றுளம்பிடவுரை கண்டடங்கிட உன்னழகை காட்டனாச்சலா
என்னை அழித்து போது என்னை கலவாவிடில் இதுவோ ஆண்மை Arunachala
ஏனெந்த உறக்கம் என்னை பிறர் இழுக்க இது உனக்கழகோ அருணாச்சலா
ஐம்புல கழ்வரகத்தினில் புகும்போதகத்தினில் இல்லையோ Arunachala
ஒருவனை ஒழித்தவர் வருவார் சூதே இது அருணாச்சலா
Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala
Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala Shiva Arunachala
Omkara Purulo Puyarvilloy Unayararivar Arunachala
அவ்வை போலின குன்னருளை தந்தனை ஆளுவதும் கடனாச்சலா
கண்ணுக்கு கண்ணாய் கண்ணின்றி காணுனை காணுவதவர் பார் Arunachala
தமிழ்ந்து போக்கவதனை விடாமல் கலந்தெனொடிருப்பாய் அருணாச்சலா
கிரி உருவாகிய கிருபை கடலே கிருபை கூர்ந்தருளுவாய் Arunachala
கீழ்மேலெங்கும் கிளருளி மணியன் கீழ்மையை பாழ் செய்யருணாச்சலா
குற்றமுற்றரு தென்னை குணமாய் பணித்தாள் குரு குருவாயுளிர் அருணாச்சலா
கூர்வாழ் கண்ணியர் கொடுமைப்படாத கூர்ந்தனை சேர்ந்தருணாச்சலா
கெஞ்சியும் வஞ்சியாய் கொஞ்சமும் இறங்கில்லை அஞ்சலன்றே அருள் அருணாச்சலா
கேளாதழைக்கும் கேடு புகழை கேடு செய்யாதருணாச்சலா
கையினிற் கனியுன் மெய்ரசம் கொண்டுவ கைவெறி கொளருள் அருணாச்சலா
கொடியே கடியரை கொள்கை காட்டி கொள்ளைகள் வாழ்வே அருணாச்சலா
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா
கோபமில் குணத்தோய் குறியாய் எண்ணிக்கொள்ள குறையன் செய்தேன் அருணாச்சலா
கௌதம போற்றும் கருணை மாமலையே கடை கரைத்தாழ்வாய் அருணாச்சலா
சகலமும் விழுங்கும் கதிரொளி நமன ஜலஜமல தீடருணாச்சலா
சாப்பாடுன்னை சார்ந்துணராயாம் சாந்தமாய் போவன் அருணாச்சலா
சித்தம் குளிர கதிர் ஹஸ்தம் வைத்த முதவா எய்திர அருள்மதி அருணாச்சலா
சீரையழித்து நிர்வாணமாய் செய்தோ சீரையழித்தருள் அருணாச்சலா
சுகக்கடல் பொங்க சொல் உணரடங்க சும்மா பொருந்திடங் அருணாச்சலா
சூது செய்தென்னை சோதியாதி உன் சோதி ஒரு காட்டர்ணாச்சலா
செப்படி வேதை கற்றி படி மயக்கு விட்டுரு படு வித்தை காட்டருணாச்சலா
சேராயன்மை நீராயுருகி கண்ணீராற்றழிவேன் அருணாச்சலா
செய்யன தள்ளி செய்வினை சுடுமலால் உய்வகைய துரை அருணாச்சலா
சொல்லாது சொல்லி சொல்லறனில் என்று சும்மாயிருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலா
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா
சோம்பியாய் சும்மா சுகமுண்டுறங்கிடில் சொல்வேரென் கதி அருணாச்சலா
சௌரிய காட்டினை சழக்கற்றதென்று சலியாதிருந்தாய் அருணாச்சலா
ஞமலியர் கேடா நான் ஒருதியால் நாடி நின் ஒருவேன் அருணாச்சலா
ஞானமில்லாதும் ஆசையற்றளவர் ஞானம் தெரித்தருள் அருணாச்சலா
நிமிரு போல் நீயும் மலர்ந்திலை என்றே நேர் நின்றனையன் அருணாச்சலா
தத்துவம் தெரியாதனையுற்றார் தத்துவம் இதுவே அருணாச்சலா
தானே தானே தத்துவம் இதனை தானே காட்டுவாய் அருணாச்சலா
திரும்பிய அந்தனை தினமாக கண்காண் திரியும் என்றனையே அருணாச்சலா.
தீரமில்லகத்தில் தேடியுந்தனையான் திரும்பவுற்றேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
துப்பறிகளாய பிறவென்மய ஒப்பிடவாயை அருணாச்சலா.
தூய் மனமொழியார் தோயும் உண்மையகம் தோயவே அருளன் அருணாச்சலா.
தெய்வம் என்றுன்னை சாரவை என்னை சேர ஒழித்தாய் அருணாச்சலா.
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா.
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா.
தேடாதூற்றனர் திருவருள் நிதியகத்தியக்கம் தீர்த்தருள் அருணாச்சலா.
தைரியமோடு மெய்யக நாடையா அத்தழிந்தேர் அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
தொட்டருள் கைமை கட்டிடாய் நிலிய நட்டமாவே நருள் அருணாச்சலா.
தோழமில் நீய தோழன்றி என்று தோழமன்றிட அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
நகைக்கிடமில்லை நின் நாடிய என்னை அருள் நகையிட்டு பார் நீ அருணாச்சலா.
நானில்லை நாடிட நானாயொன்று ஸ்தானுவன்றனை அருணாச்சலா.
நின் நெறியறி தென்னை நீராக்கிடு முன் நின் அருள் மழை பொழி அருணாச்சலா.
நீராதர புலிகிடங்களில் மயமா நின்றிடு நிலையருள் அருணாச்சலா.
நுண்ணொரு உனையான் விண்ணுரு நன்னிட எண்ணலையிருமென் அருணாச்சலா.
நூலறிவறியா பேரையதென்ற மாலறிவர் அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
நெக்கு நெக்குருகியான் புக்கிட உனை புகன கனான் நின்றனை அருணாச்சலா.
நேசமில் எனக்கு உன் ஆசையை காட்டி மோசம் செய்யாத அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா.
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா.
நைந்தழி கனியால் நலநிலை பதத்தில் நாடியுட்கொள் நலம் அருணாச்சலா.
நொன்னிரருண்டனை தந்தனை கொண்டிலை அந்த எனக்கு அருணாச்சலா.
நோக்கிய கருதிமை தாக்கிய பக்குவம் ஆக்கினி ஆண்டருள் அருணாச்சலா.
பற்றிடங்களை புற்றில் புனமருள் பற்றிட அருள் புரிய அருணாச்சலா.
பார்த்தருள் மாலர பார்த்திலையனின் அருள் பாருணக்கார் சொல்வர் அருணாச்சலா.
பித்து வித்துனை பித்தனாக்கினையர் பித்தம் தெளி மருந்தருணாச்சலா.
பீதியில் உன்னை சார் பீதியில் என்னை சேர் பீதியொன்றனக்கே அருணாச்சலா.
புல்லறி வேதுரை நல்லறி வேதுரை உள்ளிடவே அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
பூமணமாமனம் பூரணமணம் கொள்ள பூரணமணம் அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
பெயர் நினைத்திடவே பிடித்திழுத்தனையும் பெருமையால் அறிவார் அருணாச்சலா.
பேய்த்தனம் விட விடா பேயாய் பிடித்தனை பேயனாக்கினையன் அருணாச்சலா
பற்றின்றி வாழம பற்று கொடை காரணாச்சல
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல
பொடியால் மயக்கியன் போதத்தை பறித்து உன் போதத்தை காட்டினை அருணாச்சலா
போக்கும் வரவில் புது வெளியினில் போராட்டங்காட்டர்ணாச்சல
பௌதிகமாமுடல் பற்றற்று நாளும் முன் பதிஷு கண்டுர அருணாச்சலா
மலை மருந்திட நீ மலைத்திடவோ வரும் மலை மருந்தாயொழிறணாச்சல
மானம் கொண்டுருபவர் மானத்தை அழித்த அபிமானம் இல்லாதொழிர் அருணாச்சலா
மிஞ்சிடில் கெஞ்சிடும் கொஞ்சவரி ஹலியா வஞ்சியவருளெனையர்ணாச்சல
மீகாமல் நில்லாமல் மாற்றலை கலம் ஆகாமல் காத்தருள் அருணாச்சலா
முடியடி காணா முடிவிடுத்தனையேர் முடிவிட கடனில்லையர்ணாச்சல
மூக்கிலன் முன்காட்டு முகுர மகாதனை தூக்கி அணைந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா
மெய்யகத்தின் மனமென் மலரணையில் நான் மெய் கலந்திட அருள் அருணாச்சல
மேன்மேல் தாழ்ந்திடு மெல்லியர் சேர்ந்து நீ மேன்மையுற்றனையன் அருணாச்சலா
மைமயனை கருள் மையினருணர்வன் மைவசமாக்கினையர்ணாச்சல
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல
மொட்டையடித்தனை வெட்ட வெளியில் நீ நட்டமாடினயன் அருணாச்சலா
மோகம் கவித்துமன் மோகமாய் வைத்துமன் மோகம் திராயன் அருணாச்சல
மௌனியாய் கல் போல் மலராதிருந்தால் மௌனமிதாமோ அருணாச்சலா
எவனன் வாயல் மண்ணினையட்டி என் பிழை பொழித்த அருணாச்சல
யாரும் அறியாதன் மதியினை மருட்டி அவர் கொலை கொண்ட அருணாச்சலா
ரமணன் துரைத்தேன் ரோஷம் கொள்ளாதென்னை ரமித்திட செய்யவா அருணாச்சல
ராப்பகலில்லா வெறுவெளி வீட்டில் ரமித்திடுவோம் அருணாச்சலா
லட்சியம் வைத்தருவர் அஸ்திரம் விட்டனை பட்சித்த பிராணனுடனாச்சல
லாப நீக பர லாபம் இல்லனையுற்று லாபமென் ஊற்றனை அருணாச்சலா
வரும்படி சுவிலை வந்தன் படிய வந்திடும் தலை விதியர்ணாச்சல
வாவென்றஹம்புன் வாழ்வருளன்றே என் வாழ்விழந்தேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலா
வீட்டில் கஷ்டமா விட்டிடாகுலை விட்டிட அருள் புரியர்ணாச்சல
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா
அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ Arunachala Shiva Arunachala.
வீடு விட்டீர் துள விடுவுக்கு பையவுன் வீடு காட்டினை அருளாச்சலா.
வெளிவிட்டேனும் செய்ய வெறுத்திடாதும் வெளிவிட்டனை காரணாச்சலா.
வேதாந்தத்தே வேரற விளங்கும் வேத பொருள் அருளாச்சலா.
வைகளை வாட்டா வைத்தருள் புரியா வைத்தனை விழாதருளாச்சலா.
அம்புவிலாலி போல் அன்புரு நிலனை அன்பாய் கரை தருள் அருணாச்சலா.
அருணை என்றனையா அருள் கணிப்பட்டேன் அருள்வலை தப்புமோ அருணாச்சலா.
செந்தி தருள் பட சிலந்தி போர்க்கட்டி சிறையீட்டுண்டனை அருணாச்சலா.
அன்போடு நாமகள் அன்பதம் அன்பர் அன்பனாயிட அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
என்போலும் தீனரை இன்புற காத்து நீ என்னாலும் வாழ்ந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா.
இன்பொரு கண்பகம் சொற்கள் சுவியும் உன்மொழி கோல அருள் அருணாச்சலா.
ஒருமயமூதர பொன் சொல்லை நன் சொலால் ஒரு தருளேஷ்டம் பின் அருணாச்சலா.
மாலையணி கருணாச்சல ரமணாயன் மாலையணி கருணாச்சலா.
மாலையணி தருணாச்சல ரமணாயன் மாலையணிந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களோ வாழி அக்ஷரமண வாழி. ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ.
Thank you, Aruna and Ramkumar. Welcome for this somber satsang for the memory of Sri Mani Anna. As his name was V.S.Mani. Before I go further, I will read from talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. 25th December 1935. Mr. Maurice Friedman, talk 115. Even without any initial desires, there are some strange experiences for us. Wherefrom do they arise? Maharshi, the desire may not be there now, enough it was there before. Though forgotten by you, now it is bearing fruit in due course. That is how the Gnani is said to have prarabdha left for him. Of course, it is only according to the other's point of view. Talk 116. Devotee. Jiva is said to be bound by karma. Is it so? Maharshi, let karma enjoy its fruits. As long as you are the doer, so long are you the enjoyer. Devotee, how to get release from karma? Maharshi, see whose karma it is. You will find that you are not the doer, then you will be free. This requires grace of God, for which you should pray to him, worship him, and meditate on him. The karma which takes place without effort, that is the involuntary action, is not binding. Even a gnani is acting as seen by his bodily movements. There can be no karma without effort or without intentions. That is the sankalpas. Therefore, there are sankalpas for all. There are two kinds, one binding, the bandha hetu, and the other mukti hetu, that is not binding. The former must be given up and the latter must be cultivated. There is no fruit without previous karma, no karma without previous sankalpa. Even mukti must be the result of effort so long as the sense of doership persists. A Ceylonese, talk 117, that is Sri Lankan. What is the first step for realization of self? Please help me towards it. There is no use reading books. Another, this one man's request is that of all. Maharshi, quite so. If the self be found in books, it would have been already realized. What wonder can be greater than we seek the self in books? Can it be found there? Of course, books have given readers the sense to ask this question and to seek the self. Devotee, books are utterly useless. They may all be burnt. The spoken word alone is useful. Grace alone is useful. Others spoke according to their own light until finally they returned to the original question, but Sri Bhagavan remained silent. Talk 118. Mr. Rangachari, a Telugu Pandit in Ori's College in Vellore, at Vellore, asked about Nishkama Karma. There was no reply. After a time, Sri Bhagavan went up the hill and a few followed him, including the Pandit. There was a thorny stick lying on the way, which Sri Bhagavan picked up. He sat down and began leisurely to work at it. The thorns were cut off, the knots were made smooth, the whole stick was polished with a rough leaf. The whole operation took about 6 hours. Everyone was wondering at the fine appearance of the stick made of a spiky material. A shepherd boy put in his appearance on the way as the group moved off. He had lost his stick and was at a loss. Sri Bhagavan immediately gave the new one in his hand to the boy and passed on. The Pandit said this was the matter of fact answer to his question. Talk 119. Again, at the same time, there were 4 dogs in the ashram. Sri Bhagavan said that those dogs would not accept any food not partaken by himself. The Pandit put the matter to the test. He spread some food before them. They would not touch it. Then Sri Bhagavan, after a time, put a small morsel of it into his mouth. Immediately they fell to and devoured the food. Talk 120. Later a man brought 2 peacocks with their eyes screened. When let loose in Maharshi's presence, they flew away to a distance. They were brought back, but still they flew away. Sri Bhagavan said, it is no use trying to keep them here. They are not ripe in their minds as these dogs. However much they try to keep the peacocks, they would not remain there even for a minute. Talk 121. Talks between the master and the 2 Muslims on a previous occasion. Devotee, has God a form? Who says so? Devotee, well, if God has no form, is it proper to worship idols? Maharshi, leave God alone because he is unknown. What about you? Have you a form? Devotee, yes, I'm this and so. Maharshi, so then you are a man with limbs, about 3.5 cubits high, with beard, etc. Is it so? Devotee, certainly. Maharshi, then do you find yourself so in deep sleep? Devotee, after waking, I perceived that I was asleep. Therefore, by inference, I remind us in deep sleep also. Maharshi, if you are the body, why do they bury the corpse after death? The body must refuse to be buried. Devotee, no, I'm the subtle jiva within the gross body. Maharshi, so you see that you are really formless, but you are at present identifying yourself with the body. So long as you are formful, why should you not worship the formless God as being formful? The questioner was baffled and perplexed. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. As we all know, Mani Anna, in different facets of life, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is his smiling face at the well, always welcoming the devotees. As a family, we were privileged to know him for almost last 35 years in the ashram. I met him for the first time in 1988. The transformation of the ashram has started taking place even when I met him for the first time in 1988. Subsequently, Sundaramanna and him transformed the entire ashram to what it is today. I want the fellow devotees to express their interaction with Mani Anna, and there are a lot of devotees who came forward for that. We will start this with Dr. Anil Sharma. Anil?
Namaskar, Mohanji. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you all today to remember Shri V.S.Mani. I just wanted to share with you a few small incidents, as it is these small incidents that highlight for me his unending devotion and dedication. I had the privilege of meeting Sri Mani for the first time in 1986 during my first visit to Ramanasramam. This was shortly after his arrival at the ashram during the previous year, I believe. It was on the veranda at the front of the office, and he introduced himself to me as Mani. When my ear strained to catch his name, he said, "My name is Mani. That's short for Subramanian." He said it in such an understanding and kind way that I immediately felt at home with him and at the ashram. And during the following years, I, like so many others, would be welcomed at the ashram with his kindness and friendliness. He was very pleased to meet my wife, Vijaya, there during our first trip together to the ashram in 1996 for Sri Bhagavan's centenary yatra. And she felt very much at ease with him also. And during one of our subsequent visits, as we met for the first time after a long period of time, he looked at Vijaya. We were again in front of the office there. He looked at Vijaya with some concern. And he said, "Dear Vijaya, you seem to have lost a lot of weight." And then he looked at me with a glimmer in his eye. And he said to me, "And look at that, all of the weight that she's lost, it seems you have gained." We all shared a good laugh over Mani's kind approach. And despite his deep knowledge of the life and teachings of Sri Bhagavan, having grown up with Sri Ramana's grace being poured on him from his very birth, Sri Mani did not portray himself in any way different from all of us who came to Ramanasramam. He could have easily done so, but his was the way of service to all devotees of Sri Bhagavan, and we all benefited immensely from his support and guidance in this manner. During one Deepam festival, Vijaya and I were uncertain whether or not to go for Giri Pradakshina on the night of the lighting of the Deepam. We had spoken to some people, and some had suggested we should not attempt the Giri production at that time due to various reasons. When Vijaya and I sought Mani's advice, he fully supported the idea and encouraged us not to miss this opportunity. Yes, yes, go with someone who is known to you and you won't have any problem, he said. What a wonderful experience it was that night to be with our fellow devotees, walking around the sacred hill with the deepam filling our hearts. Again, all due to Mani's encouragement. Finally, when Sri Mani and Srimati Ramani were visiting the ashram here in Nova Scotia about more than 20 years ago, they rested at our place one night as their flight was set for early morning. Vijaya made some puttu for them. That's a small cake made from rice flour. This treat was very much enjoyed by Mani, and amazingly, he recalled this treat each time we saw him after that. And during my last correspondence with him in February of this year, he wrote, my late Ramani and my visit to your blessed place is as ever fresh in our memory. And this was after more than 20 years. He said, Vijaya made traditional puttu for us. She made it very well. Our visit to Nova Scotia Ashram was memorable. With these kind words, he brought the love and concern of Sri Ramana to our hearts, and we were moved by his kind remembrance. This kind of experience, I'll emphasize, is not unique to us. The same will be told by devotees from every corner of the world. It was a kind, heartfelt concern that kindled in us the joy of having Sri Bhagavan as our Guru, and the joy of having the great privilege of knowing Sri Mani and Srimati Ramani, whose entire life was centered on Sri Bhagavan. We are ever grateful. Thank you, Mani Anna. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Anil. But at the same time, I'm sorry you can't speak for 2 hours today. Now, Swaminathan Venkataraman is going to talk.
Thank you, Mohan. Namaskar, everyone. I wanted to, in the 4 minutes that I have, I wanted to make 2 points about Mani Anna from my personal experience. One is what I observed and learned about his, quote, concrete contributions to the ashram, which I guess, the word concrete is quite inappropriate as, when you hear me speak about it, and how he transformed, as Mohan mentioned, the ashram supporting Sundaramana as president. The second is more about his interactions with devotees. Anil Sharma already talked about it a little, but I'll maybe mention a few personal experiences as well. So Mani Anna retired from his work to come to the ashram and be of service. And one of the most notable things that everybody would observe is about the greening of the ashram. And he spent a lot of time, working on that project, supervising a lot of people. And I think it's how beautiful, how pleasant the ashram is. It owes a lot to his work over time. He knew a lot about native trees, not only of Arunachala, but he would always make sure that when other people come, he would find out about the native trees in their location, and he would think about whether they would be appropriate to plant in and around the ashram as well. And he would make what are called shade nets, which is basically controlling the amount of sunlight that goes into small plants, if they are not particularly suited to Tiruvannamalai weather until they could adjust, things like that. And when there were other pieces of land that came to the ashram outside us also, he would plant a lot of fruit trees in all of those places to benefit, ashram can use fruits for various, its own activities and so on. But it extended to other aspects of nature too. Cows. He actually worked to bring native Indian species from all parts of India into the ashram. And I particularly remember he was very happy once when I was there. The ashram had just received a consignment of cows from Rajasthan. And they are called Thar Parker cows, apparently. So Thar is Thar Desert. Thar Parker is, I think it comes from beyond the Thar Desert or something like that. And so he was explaining to me how there was a lot of effort involved in getting the cows and putting them in trains and making sure that the cows would actually be able to come healthy and safe through that journey. So he took a lot of interest like that, getting cows of different species, native Indian species, to the ashram. He was also responsible for making gobar gas within the ashram to help with cooking using the cow dung. So that way, very environmentally, he did a lot of things for the ashram, solar water heaters and solar lights. I think a lot of you might remember in the olden days, we would get solar water, especially in Morvi, there were solar water heaters producing hot water for baths. This is not the new Morvi that you see today, but the older Morvi guest house. So I think throughout this time, I've observed this change. I first met Mani and I think in 1995. Over time, every time I go, I would have a short conversation with him about the different changes in the ashram, especially in regard to animals, plants, trees, etc. He also had a special cage for young peacocks to protect them while they were growing before they would be, let loose. It's not like a cage as a small cage, but it's a little more of a room, I would say, an enclosure at one end of the ashram, and he would walk me through there several times, to show me what's going on there as well. Similarly, in terms of devotees, I think you will hear this as a recurring theme from everyone, but I think what was unique about him was how he had a personal connect with so many people. And maybe it may not be entirely untrue to say that he touched every person who came to the ashram in some way or the other. He would know all of them. He would know about their families. He would inquire about how, different family members are doing. Many times he would tease me for coming to the ashram alone without bringing Sangeeta and Rishabha with me. And he would sort of say, you can't do that. You have to bring and, give them the benefit of Bhagavan's grace as well. So, and I think that, and he would always be very, for example, once I very distinctly remember when I was going to the ashram, he introduced me to somebody out of the blue, as I'd never met him before. He was a disciple of Swami Rama. If you remember, living with the Himalayan master, Swami Rama, he was a very great man, saint. He was a devotee of him, and he sort of explicitly said, I think you two of you will get along well. Maybe you can take him on Girivalam. And I did. We really had a great time. We went to Girivalam within a week, like on 3 or 4 different occasions in that trip. So things like that, where he would always look out for devotees and, see, how to best serve them while they are in the ashram. Even Sangeeta, when she was coming once, he said, oh no, we were coming with Rishabha, and I think Rishabha was maybe 4 years old, 5 years old at the time. And I think she wanted to take the bus, and he said, no, don't come by bus. And he sent a car to pick the two of them up and bring them to the ashram. And so on and so forth. I could go on and on. There was a lot of us devotees have a small piece of land, which is just a few minutes away from the ashram. We all bought it about 15 years ago, almost 20 years ago now. And that was mainly due to the efforts of Mani and I. He worked with the real estate people who bought the land, and he helped a lot of us, and we are all grateful to it. I'm personally very grateful to it. Maybe in the future at some point, if I decided that I could spend, if not all the time, at least a good part of my time in Tiruvannamalai, then this piece of land would be a great boon. And it's literally a community of devotees there in this place called Ganapati Nagar. Just a couple of other things before I close about what a friend of mine. I know this is Ramana Balachandar. Many of you may know him, a musician. His father Bala and I have been friends since college. And so he would sort of say, he's experimenting with making different types of venas right now. And, he's having a carpenter and a welder work with him, as part of that effort. And both of them would give him stories about, how when the carpenter had his wife pregnant, Mama would still give him some money, even though he was not doing some work in the ashram at that time, just when he was off to take care of the newborn baby and so on. He also, when one day when his wife was pregnant and they ran into Mama coming in auto in the opposite direction, he got off. He insisted on sending them home by auto, and he walked back to the ashram. So small things like that. And then, the welder, as a small boy, he would play there, and he would say that the guard outside would often stop them from going in, because as boys, they would throw stones on the almond tree. The almonds would fall down. They would eat it. They would spit the remaining stuff back out there itself, and they would run. So they sort of make this boyish mischief, right? So apparently the guard would be, many times he would say, don't go in, you guys don't know how to behave. And apparently Mani Anna once came and said, look, at this age, boys will have fun doing things like this, and, don't stop them from going in just because of, they're throwing stones at the almond trees and so on. So, so various, I think what comes across is somebody who genuinely cared for devotees. And we know all Bhagavan said, if you take care of devotees, if you serve devotees, you serve me. Bhagavan has said that so many times. And to me, that was the other big thing. He really tried to serve devotees to the best of his ability, and that was his way of serving Bhagavan. So that's sort of some of the thoughts I wanted to share. Thank you, everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Swaminathan, for sharing your interactions with Mani Anna. Now, instead of Hema Badri as announced, now Badri is going to talk.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Both Hemas and my some of the incidents and interactions with Mani Anna. So we meet very few people in our lives who leave a lasting impression. In that list, there are some people who when we imagine their faces, it makes you smile. Mani Anna, Mani Mama is one of those individuals who made us smile, reminded you of the good things in life, and that smile was contagious. Our family had the pleasure and good fortune to be in his company many times over the last decade. Every devotee will have a story of Mani Mama, how he smiled at them, was very personable to them, their aged parents, their children, and other families during a visit to the ashram. I will slightly take a detour in seeing in the service that Mani Anna provided to the ashram and to all of us as devotees. So, in the bhakti literature of our tradition, a devotee here. I'm taking some excerpts from how a devotee looks at bhakti in this, and how service to the Almighty and service to the devotees who come there are interlinked. And so I'm just going to take the essence of this philosophy and just go through the steps and see and just and do the translation of that. So a devotee in the bhakti path here, he wants to be and serve the Almighty, and in that path, this devotee finds to first imagines oneself to be a I mean, we all imagine ourselves, hey, even if I can be this particular stone in Annamalai, wouldn't it be nice instead of being here or wherever we are during one of those times when we hit the emotional highs in the bhakti phase. So in this particular devotee's path, here's all this pining that I go through. So in his first step, this devotee thinks, hey, can I be a crane in the lake around Annamalai and then look at the hill all the time and then think about them all the time? That would be great. In my next lifetime, I be like that. Then after some time, he ponders that state and realizes he's still far away from his destination, which is Annamalai. And then he says, okay, what about if I'm a fish in the lake? That will be a nice place to be in for my lifetime as a fish. And then I'll be near the lake. I'll be touching the lake, and I'll be more closer to the earth or near that hill. And then he ponders more and says, no, that is not a place to be in. And then he says, okay, I can be a flowering tree, and those flowers will adore the hill, and that will be that'll be part of my existence, and that will be enough. And then he goes on to ponder various things like that. He says, I want to be a bush in the lake. That will be a nice state to be in. So these are the various ways of pining and pondering of being close to the Almighty, and then he kind of comes to a state where he says, maybe I'll be a flowing spring, where is a water flowing down the hill on the Annamalai hills, or any hill that he represents, that the Almighty is being represented here. And then at the end of all the pining, he says, he comes to a point where he says he pines to be a granite step leading into the sanctum sanctorum leading to the devotee on the hill. So in that level of pining, he said he achieves a state in which he says he'll be permanently there with the Almighty for all time. And this is in this type of pining, this is considered one of the highest levels, where he has pondered all the other forms of bhakti, and he comes to this, and he wants to be part of the thing. At the same time, he is serving the devotee by being a step leading to the Almighty. So I was pondering this myself, and then said, Mani Mama here embodies this type of great devotion to Bhagavan here. He is in Annamalai. He is serving all the devotees who walk through the place. Not only devotees come to the ashram, also the community outside Tiruvannamalai. He has done so much of work around the ashram and around for the hill also. So day and night, his service was to the hill, to the ashram, and that is the highest form of bhakti representation in the bhakti literature. And I just wanted to point that as a element of bhakti. Going towards more incidents in our interactions with Mani Mama, Hema has this to say. During the lockdown a few years ago, it was April 8th or 9th, and Mani Mama's, when we saw it was this Hema's incident with Mani Mama. During April 8th or 9th, 2020, when we saw Mani Mama coming back to the ashram during one of those lockdown times. It could have been a Paurnami day, or he was doing his regular rounds and walking towards the Mahanirvana road. He signaled to me to wait. He finished his pradakshana and came to me straight. He inquired about my mother and our well-being. He wanted to know if we had necessities and, most importantly, access to prescription meds now that there was a lockdown and even the pharmacies were closed at that time. And we were moved to tears as we never expected him to think about that in such an occasion. And also not only for Hema, and he was thinking about his mother, who would have some I'm sure some small prescriptions that she needed to take regularly. And both my mother-in-law and Hema were very moved, and she's pointed to that specific incident. During her entire stay, he would make it a point to stop by and inquire about us. We were one of the thousands of devotees he sees at the ashram. Nothing special, and we were also new to the ashram. But he would make it a point to stop in and check. He showed great empathy and understanding at a difficult time. I would be remiss if I didn't mention his sense of humor. It was during a Sri Vidya Havan during the lockdown time. We were clad in a South Indian Iyengar style 9-yard sari, and he pointed it out to the priest, saying, Bhagavanukku inikku Iyengar kattu, meaning Iyengar style attire for our Bhagavan during lockdown. Particularly the fact that Badri and I would take turns to visit the ashram and rarely come together was amusing to him. He would ask whether it was a competition between us. It's hard not seeing his physical presence on the ashram grounds in the future. It's going to give us comfort that he is now the eternal feet of our Father, and his legacy will continue to live in the ashram gardens, the Goshala, and every speck of sand and dust in Tiruvannamalai and Ramanashram. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Thank you, Badri. Now, Lavanya Hari and Ananya Hari are going to chant.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Ramana Padam Tavam Karunai Nidam Tarum Ramana Muni Nine Maname. Ramana Padam Tavam Karunai Nidam Tarum Ramana Muni Nine Maname. Ramana Muni Nine Maname. Charanam Ramana Gurudeva. Charanam Ramana Gurudeva. Charanam Ramana Gurudeva. Charanam Ramana Gurudeva. Arunai Malai Tiruvannamalai Udai Ramana Muni Ninai Maname. Arunai Malai Tiruvannamalai Udai Ramana Muni Ninai Maname. Ramana Muni Ninai Maname. Charanam Ramana Gurudeva. Charanam Ramana Gurudeva. Vanda Vinay Vidatanda Vinay Say Ramana Muni Ninai Maname. வந்த வினை விட தந்த வினை செய்ய ரமண முனி நினை மனமே ரமண முனி நினை மனமே சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா ஞான குருவிடம் மோன அருள் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே ஞான குருவிடம் மோன அருள் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே ரமண முனி நினை மனமே சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா வேத முறைப்படி நாதம் தினம் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே வேத முறைப்படி நாதம் தினம் பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே ரமண முனி நினை மனமே சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா கள்ளம் மனம் விட உள்ளம் நிலை பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே கள்ளம் மன விட உள்ளம் நிலை பெற ரமண முனி நினை மனமே ரமண முனி நினை மனமே சரணம் ரமண குருதேவா 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 ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய.
Thank you, Lavanya and Ananya. Now, Abhilash is going to talk.
नमस्ते रमणेश नमस्ते मुनिकुंजरा नमस्ते करुणा पूर्णे नमस्ते सर्वसिद्धिदा नमस्ते भगवान रमणा नमस्ते कविकुल गणपति नमस्ते अरुणाचल पुत्रे नमस्ते सर्वसिद्धिप्रदा. ओम नमो भगवते श्री रमणाय. Namo Ramana to all. As part of today's satsang, we are all hearing and remembering about the services of Sri.V.Venkataraman Subramanian, fondly known as Mani Mama and Mani Anna by many of the devotees, fellow devotees. As recollecting from our childhood, we all, my brothers, sisters, and everyone, we saw no change in Mani Mama, either physically in his structure or his mental composure. From our first interaction during our childhood till the recent one, he was always the same cheerful as every devotee sees that smile on his face. And also, he shed a lot of concern towards everyone visiting ashram and inquiring about the others of every family member. We were told by our parents, Srimati Ramanaputri and Narsimham, my father and mother, that Subramanian was the name given to Mani Mama by Bhagavan himself, as he was younger to Ganeshan Mama. So as Ganesha is already born, so the next one was Subramanian. That's what Bhagavan said, it seems. And when it comes to Mani Mama, he literally spoke very little. He used to, when we asked him about sharing his experiences or sharing anything about Bhagavan, he smilingly says, I am only a servant of Bhagavan to do service of Bhagavan's devotees. I do not know anything else. Saying so, he negates any such request very politely, even without we feeling that, oh, we didn't get anything from uncle. But on the same note, he used to guide us in many ways. Even when we visit ashram, sometimes he walks us around ashram into different places. Like as other devotees shared, he was the one who aptly, for his name, like Subramanian, he protected the peacocks at ashram. He was making sure that the cages were, meaning the shelters for the peacock, were built perfectly so that they can hatch their eggs and safely get their next generations come into life. And he walked us even into those cages, like those shelter rooms, wherein he specifically mentioned about taking care of the white peacocks, which were at that time they were getting very minute in number. And Mani Mama has made every effort when he to visit our home at Hyderabad during his visits to Hyderabad. And he fondly calls my mother sister, and he talks about very jovially to everyone in the family. And when I see Mani Mama serving ashram and helping 3 generations of presidents, to start with his father, Shri T.N.Venkataraman, or Venkataraman Tata, whom we used to call very fondly, and later his brother, Sundaram uncle, and now his nephew, our current president, Anandanna. Personally, I feel that Mani Mama did service to all the devotees, as he always says that I'm just a servant to Bhagavan. As such, Bhagavan's Aksharamanamala, what the 104th verse states, like to serve to his devotees is serving to him. On a note, like recently I was reading on July 17th some reminiscences, and in that I was reading about Mani Mama. And after that, suddenly we got this information about Mani Mama observing in Arunachala on July 19th. I wanted to share that piece of quote, what he started with his reminiscences in that book. The quote, Mani uncle himself shares his experience. Quote says, I was the first male child to be born in Tiruvannamalai. My 2 elder brothers were born in South Tamil Nadu. End of the quote. Having read this on that day, I was thinking about Mani Mama in such a privileged person that he was born in Tiruvannamalai in presence of Bhagavan, And in that even he mentions about his childhood with Chinnaswami, Sri Niranjanananda Swami, and Bhagavan, in how they used to play in the Veda Patashala area, and if Bhagavan walks around, all the kids used to stop. And so that was going. I was reading all those things, and when I heard about this on July 19th, the first thing which struck my mind was Mani uncle is the first male child of Ramana's clan who was born and merged in Arunachala, Tiruvannamalai itself. When I recollect about Mani uncle with many ways, like in few of our visits to ashram, one of the visit I wanted to go up to the top of the hill, and reading about other devotees' experiences and everything. And even today, when if I go around, anyone in our family going around the hill for Giri Pradakshina, we go and inform ashram management. Mani uncle was the first one, if not president of ashram, as we think that it is informing Bhagavan himself. So one of the occasion, I wanted to go up to the top of the hill, and I went after the morning breakfast with a dilemma in my mind whether it can be approved or it cannot be approved. I went to Mani uncle, who was sitting in his chair in the ashram office. Uncle, I would like to go up to the top of the hill, but I don't know. And I have few of my other friends, like they are swamis or brahmacharis from Chinmaya mission. They also were with me, about 6 to 7 people. We all wanted to go up. He said immediately, "Oh, very nice. You can all go, but make sure that you follow the path. There is no fixed path. There is no directions or anything stating that. But just follow the path which is very clear. And if you see that you are missing the path or something, because I don't know Tamil by myself, so he mentioned, just ask this Ucha Ela Pole. I don't know whether I'm saying it right or wrong, but that is what I still remember. So that is the only thing he said. And he called one of the office, one of the ashramites, asking them to show us the path down the hill to get to the place where we can start climbing up. It's not towards the Skanda ashram. So that is how. And after we came back in the evening, he himself comes to us and inquires about our trip to the top of the hill. And that is how he was taking care of every devotee, not only me. That this is my personal experience. Not to share, there are many such kind of experiences. And when we go to ashram, and if we don't see Mani uncle or Sundaram uncle during that time, but if we are in the ashram and doing offering prayers to Bhagavan, they all come during that is how they come after the puja and come to us, talk to us personally. And many number of incidents like this has happened in our visits to Ramanashramam. Saying so, I would like to share my thought of how uncle has given everyone that warmth whenever we visited ashram, and made sure that our life at ashram, the stay, when we are there, it is perfectly aligned to what Bhagavan has blessed us to be there. Jai Ramana. Namo Ramana to all. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Abhilash. I humbly request all the fellow devotees, if we can keep our speeches to 4 minutes, because there are a lot of other devotees to follow. Please. Now, Kanishka Agarwala is going to talk.
I'm going to share a few thoughts on one aspect of a multifaceted man, and that too from the limited perspective of a seeker who sought refuge in the Maharishi. 30 years ago, my mother and I got off the Bangalore Pondicherry bus at the gate of Sri Ramanasramam. Mani uncle was the first person we met. He was wearing the warmest smile and welcomed us, who were total strangers to him, with great affection. Over the days, he would introduce me gradually to different facets of Bhagavan, to ashram life, and to other members of the family of seekers who had sought refuge in the Maharishi. He would, with utmost tenderness, guide me from time to time and made sure that I hewed to an earnest pursuit of sadhana. His way was not one of lecture, commentary, or admonishment. He was never intruding. But with the gentlest of words, he made sure that I found firm footing every step of the way. Bhagavan was no longer in the body, and I am certain that I would have felt the want of a living master. But with Mani uncle's generosity and care, the Maharishi came alive for me. He lit the path and he walked alongside. He would often remind me that only a constant and sincere effort at seeking the self was required, and Bhagavan would take care of the rest. And I was not by any means the only one to whom he was so disposed. Legions of Gurudev's family of seekers have been fortunate to have received Mani uncle's kind, gentle, genteel, and affectionate care and guidance. Mani uncle loved plants and trees, be those flowering or fruiting or simply foliage. He was quite a horticulturist. On one of our visits, he took us to a part of the ashramam premises that had a special place in his heart. A patch of land that served as the plant nursery. Seedlings and cuttings and plants that were weakened were all there. He tended to each with infinite care, patience, and gentleness. He would give a touch here, a prop there, a straightening here, and a pruning there, ultimately rendering each plant strong enough to be transplanted or restored to vigor. He took great delight in this, but never pride. He would say, I only make an effort. Nature does the rest. It took me years to realize that the tremendous capacity to care for, to nurture, and to minister to all others was the brightly burning core in Mani uncle. It is what he embodied. And everything he did came from that beautiful effulgent place. Gurudev's family of seekers is poorer today with Mani uncle's passing. But if I were to think back, when we were to think back, most of us will be able to recall vividly his smiling face and instances of his gentle solicitude, grace, and kindness. It would be fitting tribute to him if we emulated at least some of his ways and remained close to the path that he so assiduously exhorted us to follow. Make a sincere and constant effort at seeking the self, and Bhagavan will take care of the rest. May he be absorbed in Gurudev. Namaste.
Thank you, Kanishka. Now, Dr. Ravi Iyer is going to talk.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. everyone who has met Mani Mama, as he is fondly known to thousands of people, have said everything that needs to be said. The stories are remarkably similar, and listening to these stories for the past hour, I'm struck by how uniform everyone's experiences have been of this remarkable soul. My first encounter with Mani Mama was in 2002 or 3. I had first come to the ashram in 1980, and then been periodically coming to the ashram until 1988 when I came to the US. So there was a large gap from 1988, and my next visit was in 2002 or 2003. So when I reached there, everything was different. The people I had known in the 80s were not very visible. People who I had become familiar with. And now I was coming there, I felt almost alone and strange. And apart from Bhagavan, even the ashram seemed a little busier than the more laid back environment that I was used to. So when I checked in at the main office and wrote my name, I was standing there a little bewildered, a little confused. And Mani Mama looked at me, and there was the silent invitation almost. He did not even have to say a word, and I felt I could come there and tell him my confusion. So I began, I said, I am coming to the ashram after almost 20 years. I used to come when I was in my 20s. Now I'm coming at this age. My father used to bring me. I used to come. So he immediately asked me, what is the name of your father? So I told him, Ganeshan Ramamurthy. He immediately jumped out of his chair. Ramamurthy, oh, you are Ramamurthy's son. Come. And immediately grabbed my hand with so much joy, dragged me out of the room to the next room. Says, remember, this is Bhagavan's old devotee son. Come, I want to show you what your father has done for the ashram. And then he took me all over the ashram, pointing out various places, stuff that I had never learned about my father. He had never told me these stories. And, there was no Vilvam in this entire Tiruvannamalai. There was no Vilva tree. Your father was instrumental in bringing that. And then he took me to the nursery, showed all the flowers and the plants that, see, we work with the Arunachala Reforestation Trust, and everything had been cut down and deforested. So we are growing this, and we are actively involved in this. It took me to the new library, pointed out various structures, to the Goshala. At every point, he was reacquainting me with the new ashram, infusing me with the connection that there was nothing changed. The same love, same compassion, always there. And in this way, I began to realize he was not just showing me trees or talking about my father. He was connecting me back to my roots, ensuring that I don't get lost in confusion. In Tamil, there is a phrase, Adiyarki Adiyen, which means it is said of Lord Shiva that Shiva is the servant of devotees. And Mani Mama, in this Rupam that he always cultivated, being a total servant of everyone who comes, he literally manifests the divinity that resides in Bhagavan and Lord Shiva himself. And in this, I personally, every time I go to the ashram, I look at, I see, I watch these hundreds of such devotees who are there working, serving. And today, this Mani Mama that I'm talking about, but there are thousands of Mani Mamas. Mani Mama always exists. And in this form, I remember him of service, constant enfolding compassion, very astute observance of surroundings without a single word, immediately divining the inner essence of the problem of what is going on and directly acting to eliminate the connection, the confusion, and establish the person very firmly in Ramana Smriti. This is the glowing tribute that one can pay to the feet of someone who has served Bhagavan for so many years. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Ravi Iyer. Now, Sunita Parshuraman is going to talk.
Thank you, Mohan. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. When I think of Mani Mama, what immediately comes to my mind is Karma Yogi. Mama was the perfect Karma Yogi, dedicating his entire life to serving the ashram and to serving Bhagavan's devotees all over the world. As others have shared, he was always present at the ashram, greeting us as we entered and smiling as we stood in line to enter the dining hall. He loved every inch of the ashram, and as others have said, especially the trees and plants and all the wonderful animals and birds that make Sri Ramanasramam so special, like Panchavati of the Ramayana. Devotees of Bhagavan in the Bay Area were fortunate to get to know Mani Mama personally as a father, a husband, and friend, since his son Ramanan lives here. Every time Mama and Mami visited Ramanan, they would attend our weekly Saturday satsangs without fail. And I know they truly enjoyed these evenings and made many friends with the devotee community in the Bay Area. At the satsangs, Mama would always sit at the back, unassuming and humble. Whenever he met devotees from the Bay Area at the ashram, he would connect them with me, requesting me to add them to our mailing list. So many have joined our group through an introduction from Mama. And in general, he was a great connector of devotees. Whether you were visiting Madurai, Tiruchuri, or Bali, he had a Rolodex ready with him, quickly bringing devotees together. He has participated in many of our functions and addressed devotees, sharing his reminiscences of having the privilege of seeing Bhagavan in the body as a young boy. He shared with us that he once enacted a play in front of Bhagavan, in which he delivered a line saying, "I will serve the ashram until my last breath." I believe that was the last line of that play. And he said, Bhagavan smiled at him and said, "Mani nanna mani maniya pesarane," meaning Mani's speech is excellent. Mani also means gem in Tamil. I saw him at the ashram in June when I visited with Niranjan. He said he felt he had served the ashram to the best of his abilities with complete dedication. He was very proud of Ramanan, Shanti, and his grandchildren. I felt he was at peace. I share my sincere condolences with Ramanan and Shanti. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Thank you, Sunita. Now, Karthik is going to speak. We'll get back to Karthik. Now, Prasad Saripalli is going to talk.
రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము, రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. మణియన్న మీ సేవలకును రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. మణియన్న మీ సేవలకును రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. మణియన్న మీ సేవలకును రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. నిలచి అతిథి ఆదరము పెరుగని సేవనము, నిలచి అతిథి ఆదరము అలు పెరుగని సేవనము. ఎలాగునను మరువగలము, ఎలాగునను మరువగలము. పాలంత తెలుపు మీ సౌహృదము రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. మణియన్నా మీ సేవలకును రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. తనలో తాను తలంచుచును, తనలో తాను తలంచుచును. మనసార నవ్వు మీ మోము రమణు పదాంకిత సేవా. రమణు పదాంకిత సేవా శ్రమణులై మనిన మిత్రోవా రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. మణియనా మీ సేవలకును రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. దినము దినము పెనవుచునిటులినాళ్ళు, దినము దినము పెనవుచునిటులినాళ్ళు. మనసు నిలుపలేక మాయునాళ్ళు. అనవరతము పదముననే, అనవరతము పదముననే పనిసియుండు ఉన్నమి అంతరము రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. మణియన్నా మీ సేవలకును రుణము తీర్చుకోలేము. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prasad. Now Gayatri Govindan is going to chant.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Today I'll be chanting a few verses from Ashtavakra Gita, the first chapter. Ashtavakra Gita is a very valuable work containing the highest Advaitic teaching imparted by sage Ashtavakra to King Janaka. An edition with limited circulation carrying the Kannada transliteration of Ashtavakra Gita was published by Mysore Palace, and a copy of it was presented to Sri Bhagavan by the Maharaja of Mysore. The specialty of the copy presented to Sri Bhagavan is that Bhagavan copied the original Sanskrit text in his own hand in the free space above the Kannada version, and also wrote the caption Maharaja of Mysore. And this was carefully preserved by Ashram Archives and was published in 2001 for the first time by the then president, who's Mani Mama's elder brother at that time. Before I chant, just wanted to say just 2 sentences. I know we are short on time with my experience. In 2020, when as just a regular devotee of Bhagavan, I had gone to India to see my family for as they were going through some health crisis. And I wrote to Ashram stating that if they could allow me for 15 minutes to just come and see Bhagavan at that time, because this was the time when there was no vaccines available, and right around the time of Diwali in 2020. And I did go to the ashram and met Shri Mama in the ashram hall. He recognized my face, even though I'm like only a yearly visitor once in a year, just a regular devotee who took refuge in Bhagavan, and said to have lunch, prasad a little bit, and then leave. Although my family was insisting that we leave immediately due to shortage of time, I decided to force everybody to stay back and have a little bit of prasad before going to the Arunachaleshwara temple and then to the Girivalam. Because I said, if there is a word coming in from ashram, it is Bhagavan's words. Just like everybody was talking about how Mama always took devotee, serving devotee is like serving Bhagavan. I also felt that day Mama was acting, Bhagavan was acting through Mama. So after having, everybody knows how difficult it is to have darshan at the Arunachaleshwara temple, especially during these festival season. Extremely difficult, even if you get 100 rupees ticket or go through some known person there. And I said, if I do not mind missing the temple, but I want to stay in the ashram to have a little bit of prasad and go. And after having the prasad and finishing the Girivalam, I had the best darshan of Arunachaleshwara temple along with me and my family, in the, which we never got in the last 10 years or so. Thanks to Mama and thanks to Bhagavan acting through Mama on that day. With that, I'll start the recital of Ashtavakra Gita. Janaka uvacha katam jnanam avapnoti katam muktir bhavishyati vairagyam cha katam praptam etad bruhi mama prabho. Ashtavakra uvacha muktim ichchasi chetat vishayan vishayatyaja kshama arjavadaya tosha satyam piyusha vadu bhaja. Na prithvi na jalam na agnir na vayurdyaur na vabhavan yesham sakshinam atmanam chidrupam vidhi muktaye yadi deham pratakritya cheti vrishramya tishtasi adunaiva sukhi shanto bandhamukto bhavishyasi natvam vipradiko varno nashrami naksha gochara asangosi nirakaro visvasakshi sukhi bhava dharma dharmau sukham dukkham manasani na te vibho na kartosi na bhoktasi mukta evasi sarvada eko drishtasi sarvasya mukta prayosi sarvada ayameva hito bandho drishtaram pashyasitaram aham kartehyamanam mahakrishna dhamshitaha naham kartoti vishwa samritam pitva sukhi bhava eko vishuddha bodhoham iti nischaya magnina प्रज्वाल्या ज्ञानगहनं वीतशोको सुखी भव यत्र विश्वम् इदं भाति कल्पितं रज्जु सर्पवत् आनन्दं परमानन्दः सबोधस्त्वं सुखं भव मुक्ताभिमानि मुक्तो हि बद्धो बद्धाभिमान्यपि किं वदन्ति सत्येयं यामति सा गतिर्भवत् आत्मा साक्षी विभुः पूर्ण एको मुक्तिश्च तक्रियः असंगो निस्पृहः शान्तो ब्रह्मा संसारवानिव कूटस्थं बोधम् अधुनैवम् आत्मानं परिभावय आभासोऽहं ब्रह्म मुक्त्वा भावं ब्रह्म मतान्तरम् देहाभिमानं पाशेन चिरं बद्धोऽसि पुत्रक बाधोऽहं ज्ञानकङ्गेन तः निकृत्य सुखी भव निस्सङ्गो निष्क्रियोऽसि त्वं स्वप्रकाशो निरञ्जनः अयमेव हितो बन्धः समाधिनुमतिष्ठति एकं सर्वगतं व्योम बहिरन्तर्यथा घटे नित्यं निरन्तरं ब्रह्म सर्वभूतगणो तथा ओम नमो भगवते श्री रमणाय.
Thank you, Gayatri. Now, Karthik Ramamurthy is going to chant, is going to talk, I'm sorry.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We are all gathered around the world to celebrate the life of our dear Mani Mama at this memorial service. Ironically, Mani Mama would have not liked all of this fuss around him. Yet, the love, affection, and guidance he gave us when in the mortal coil compels all of us to have this memorial event. I experienced both Mani Mama and Ramani Mami's immense love and affection for me, my family, and the overall California satsang here. He was ever gracious, and I remember with fondness the weekly satsang trips and trips to the farmer's market with him and Mami. Mami used to call me Sarathi or charioteer, and that title gave me great pleasure and joy. I will forever cherish those wonderful memories. His and Mami's presence in the satsangs was soothing and inspiring. It was Mama who guided us to include the Ramana Stuti Panchakam in our satsang routine, thus firmly lodging his unstinting devotion to Bhagavan in all our hearts. That was his great gift to all of us in the California satsang. I will end by saying that Mama was firmly in Bhagavan when he was in the body, and now he is in Bhagavan when he has shed his mortal coil. I can very much feel and sympathize with the pain and sadness that Ramanan, Shanti, and the extended family must be experiencing right now. Time heals everything, and in time we will all be left with the memory of a beautiful, complete, and devoted life that was Mani Mama and Ramani Mami. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Karthik. Now, Satyanarayanan is going to talk.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I would like to present at the feet of Bhagavan a poem in the memory of Shri V.S.Mani, Mama. Ever smiling gem, the orange glow of the twilight sun is consumed by the Arunachala hill. Its glow, ever present, even in the reflection of the shining moon and the twinkling stars, and in the sharp dimensions of a gem, it shines Its rays bring light and hope always. Mani Mama, as my generation affectionately calls him, is a rare gem. His face imbibed a natural smile that glitters, that invites, and at once puts at ease any devotees. His bright eyes kindles the deep devotion in any seeker. The duty of his being was always to serve with no discrimination. A shining example of a karma yogi, our Shri V.S.Mani. Like the rays of the sun, his service touched everyone and everything. The great Maharishi's grandson, also a faithful compass, an Upaguru, always pointing, moving us closer to the real Sadguru and aid to dwell in his presence. Devotees worldwide initiated, redirected, and advanced in their journey through the relentless helping nature of this kindred spirit. His tireless efforts shaped the place we all call our home, Sri Ramanasramam. The many advancements he brought in could be summed up in 3 words: caring for devotees. Every cow, every tree and plant within the ashram compound had absorbed his compassion and love. The trees through their leaves and the cows through their perennial milk stream radiates his love back for generations to come. Our heart swells in gratitude to this humble soul, Sri V.S.Mani, who inspires all those wishing to serve, who shines absorbed in Arunachala. We are sure that in our next visit to the ashram, we will find his ever smiling presence waiting to receive us with open hands and to take us to our Satguru. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Satya. Now, Rajesh Narayanan is going to talk.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanasramam. Namo Ramana to all. As many Bhagavan devotees have already shared here, Mani Mama is a humble and true servant of the ashram and its devotees, and it cannot be emphasized anymore. We just met him a month back, in fact, exactly a month back, I should say, on our recent visit to the ashram. And as always, he inquired about the family. You won't forget even a single family member, and all Beria devotees. Regarding our personal interactions, Mani Mama and Ramani Mami were the first devotees to come to our house when we hosted our first satsang in 2008, and we were new, we had just started visiting the ashram during the time, and and this is something which we will always cherish as a great blessing. It's still very vivid in our memories. And in our subsequent visits to the ashram and Tiruvannamalai, he has always guided us. Even in fact, with some authority, he will say, go to these places today, now, and he will arrange the means also. He was the reason we had the good fortune to visit places away from the ashram, like Pavarkundra, etc. And also gave us instructions to go to, and instructions on the contacts and everything, arranged for a visit to go to Madurai Sri Ramana Mandiram, Sundara Mandiram in Tiruchuri, and Muruganar Mandiram in Ramanathapuram. On our December 2009 visit to the ashram, I remember sitting in the Bhagavan Samadhi hall at 5:30 in the morning, as it was Mari and the Vishnu Sahasranam chanting was going on. And Mama sends me a long WhatsApp message that today, on that day, we visit the temples in Tirukovilu and the Aranyanallur temple nearby. It was wonderful. He gave us detailed instructions as to when we should leave and who can help our transportation, etc. In fact, I was just reading I still have the text. I was just reading it last week, and it was so humbling. This time, a month back, when we were there, he asked us how long we are staying at the ashram, and I said 4 days, and he said, "No, perhaps you should plan on staying here longer for a time going forward." This was perhaps the last conversation I had with Mama, and I will definitely take it as Bhagavan's order to us. Now he's merged in Arunachala. He will always be cherished in all our memories. It's in fact such a good fortune. It's a great blessing to have known such a wonderful person, humble, gracious, and always very welcoming person like Mani Mama. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanasramam.
Thank you, Rajesh. Now, Hema and Badri are going to chant.
Tiruchitrambalam. Tirunyana Sambandar அருளிய திருவண்ணாமலை தேவாரம்.
உண்ணாமுலை உமையானோடு உடனாகிய ஒருவன் பெண்ணாகிய பெருமான்மலை திருமாமணி திகழ மன்னாந்தன தகுதித்திரன் மழலை மூழவதியம் அண்ணாமலை தொழுவாழ்வினை வழுவாவண்ணவருமே தேமாங்கனி கடுவன் கோள திடுகொம்போடு தீண்டி தூமாமழை துருகம் மீசை சிறுநுண்டோடி சீதர ஆமாம்பினை அணையும் பொழில் அண்ணாமலை அண்ணல் பூமாங்கழல் உனை சேவடி நினைவாரினே பீலிம் மயில் பெடையோடுரை பொழில் சூழ்களை மோத்தம் சூழின் மணி தரைமேனிலை சுரியும் விரிசாரம் ஆலிம் மழை தவழும் பொழில் அண்ணாமலை அண்ணல் காலம் வரி தொலை சேவடி தொழுவானே உதிரும் மயிரிடுவெண்டலை கலனா உலகெல்லாம் எதிரும் பலி உணவாகவும் மிருதேறுவதெல்லாம் முதிரு சடை இளவெண்பிலை முடிமேல் கொள்ள வழிமேல் அதிரும் கழல் அடிகிடம் அண்ணாமலையதுவே மரவஞ்சிலை தரணம் மிகு மணியுந்து வெள்ளருவி அரவம் செயல் முரவம் படும் அண்ணாமலை அண்ணன் உறவம் சடை உலவும் புனல்
உடனாவது மோரா குரவங்கமிழ் மருமென் குழல் உமைகுள் போதல் போனமே பெருகும் போனல் அண்ணாமலை பிறை சேர்கடல் நஞ்சை பருகும் தலை துணிவார் பொடி அணிவாரது பருகி கருகும் நீடு உடையாசல் சடையாக்களில் பரவி உருகும் மணல் உடையாதம உரையோடையாமே கரிகாலன உடற்கொள்கள கழுதாடிய காட்டில் நரியாடிய நடுவெண்பலை உதையும்பவையுறல எரியாடிய இரவர்களிடம் இனவண்டிசை முரல அறியாடிய கண்ணாளுடன் அண்ணாமலையதுவே ஒளிரு புலி அதலாடையன் உமையஞ்சுதல் பொருட்டால் கிளறு கூறன் மதமான வதனம் பீடித்துரித்து வெளிரு பட விளையாடிய விகிதம்பரை அலறு பட வடதானிடம் அண்ணாமலையதுவே விழிவார்கனி படினோரிய கடல்வண்ணனும் வேத கிளர்தாமரை மலர்மேலுவை கேடில் புகழோம் அளவாவன அழலாகிய அண்ணாமலை அண்ணல் தளராமுலை முரவல் உமை தலைவன் மடி சரணே தேவேந்துர மாசூர்தர வெயிலென்றுழல் வாரும் மார்பம் உதை மலிசீவர மறையாவருவாரும் அலம்பதம் உரை கொள்ளமென் அண்ணாமலை அண்ணல் கூர்வெண்மழு படையாமல கடல் சேர்வது குணமே வெம்பொந்திய கதிரோனொளி விலகும் விரிசாரல் அம்பொந்தி முகையிலைதவன் அண்ணாமலையதனை கொம்பொந்துவ குயிலாடுவ குளர்காழியும் ஞான சம்பந்தன தமிழ் வல்லவர் அடிவேணுதல் தவமே திருச்சிற்றம்பலம்.
Thank you, Hema and Badri. Now, Ravi Chandramouli is going to talk.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Namaha. Thank you for giving me a few minutes. About Mani Anna, there are so many things that one can talk that, just 4 minutes is really not sufficient. However, all of my friends who have spoken before me have said all that they wanted to say. And I and myself and my wife Vasanti especially cherish one of the visits of Mani Anna to the Bay Area when he so graciously
acceded to our request to visit our home. I think it was sometime in May of 2015. And he had a twinkle in his eye when he saw the registration plate on my vehicle, which had the plate number 3 Ramana. So he inquired about it. And we brought him home and we took him to the Mount Madonna Hanuman temple here. The reason I bring this up is because just about a month or 5 weeks back, we were in Tiruvannamalai, we met him and he inquired about the temple, which we had taken him only once. And when we got back, when we went to the temple, and very interestingly, the priest there is a Caucasian gentleman, but his name is Janardhan, and his wife also a Caucasian lady whose name is Sita, who currently is in Tiruvannamalai, I think. So JD was here and he said, Ravi, do you remember you brought that gentleman when we were in Tiruvannamalai? Out of the blue, we went to the ashram and he remembered his visit here, and he remembered meeting us here, and he was inquiring about the temple. And for some strange reason, it didn't surprise me at all, because I always think of Mani Anna as having a phenomenal memory. I don't know how he does it, and ever smiling countenance. When I think of him, it's really difficult for me to talk about remembering him, because you can only remember somebody whom you have forgotten. He is etched in all our memories, and he is a light that has lit thousands and thousands of lamps. And just now, I think prior to my talking, there was somebody spoke about Jnana Sambandhar and Tevaram. I'm looking at Tiruvachakam here, where one sentence especially captured me and kind of epitomized what and who Mani Anna is. Yes, he is not in his physical mortal form now, but this Tiruvachakam poem, one of the Atyayams, I think chapters, it's called Piditta Path, that is likable or liked or well-liked 10 poems and songs. One of them starts like this. Ammaye appa oppila maniye anbinil vilainda aar amude. That sentence, anbinil vilainda aar amude, translates sort of, but really doesn't capture the essence as love, as the river of nectar that sprung from this fountain of love. To me, that epitomizes Mani Anna. Forever and ever, he will be in our hearts. We cherish him. Our hearts go out to the immediate family, because he is not in his stula shariram or physical form now, but he will always live with us. And we want to thank him and thank all of you. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Namaha. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. Now Peter Burking is going to talk.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
4 minutes, 38 seconds.
I'd like to share 2 experiences that I had with Mani Mama. In about 2016, I was at Sri Ramanasramam with my friend and fellow devotee, Martin Wolf. We were staying at Morbi housing across the street. I knew Martin was sick at the time, but I didn't realize how sick he was. Martin suddenly collapsed as we started walking across the street to the ashram. He had passed out and was almost completely unconscious. With great difficulty, I carried him to the ashram office, which was the closest place where I knew he could get emergency help. Mani Mama was there. He immediately took charge of the situation, springing into emergency response mode, which included getting Martin into an auto rickshaw to take him to the ashram infirmary, where he was revived and got all the help he needed. Mani Mama acted with calm competence and compassionate concern, during this emergency situation, and he was conscientiously involved in supporting Martin's recovery throughout the rest of our stay at the ashram. He arranged for special tiffin meals to be made for me to take to Martin, since for a while Martin could not get to the dining hall. He made a point to monitor Martin's condition during the rest of our visit. Martin got better by the end of the visit, and Martin and I were extremely grateful for Mani Mama's role in this. This is just one example among the many that others have already shared of how Mani Mama served all visitors to the ashram with the same care and concern as if we were family members. The other experience I wanted to share concerns Mani Mama's love of trees, which Swaminathan, Kanishka, and others have already described. One day, Mani Mama offered to give me a personal tour of the trees on the ashram grounds. I was honored and delighted. He was obviously a very busy man, so I expected only a very brief tour. But he spent 45 minutes enthusiastically showing me the collection of beautiful, rare, and unique trees on the ashram grounds. It was inspiring to me to see how Mani Mama treated the ashram trees. He obviously had a special relationship with them, as if they were human friends. He definitely embodied the spirit of Bhagavan and his friend of all attitude towards these trees. It was a great testament to Mani Mama's depth of service and caring for devotees in creating a bountiful, vibrant, natural environment for them in the ashram. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Peter. Now, Carlos Lopez is going to talk.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. It is said in traditional spiritual Indian lore that the happiest moment in the life of a yogi is the moment of his last breath. Happiness is the self, our own true nature. Mani Mama's life inspires us to start at the end. Mani Mama welcomes us to start with our own existence, the only existence there is, indivisible, birthless and deathless, beyond all perception and conception. Like this, let us honor Mani Mama and happily meditate, patiently, constantly, calmly, a beginningless and endless absorption in the heart as heart. Like this, practicing Atma Vichara, who am I, with intelligence and humility, as Bhagavan graciously instructed, one finds that what seemed to be one's own effort, when is met with Bhagavan's grace, this practice, this constant abidance, is but a river of silent joy, immeasurable peace, effortlessly merging in the ocean of self. When I first touched the ground at the most holy site of Sri Ramanasramam many moons ago, perhaps for the first time in my life, I felt truly welcomed. Looking at Mani Mama's smile, his eyes full of light, this welcoming deepens, not deepened as in the past tense, as Arunachala smiles is ever present, freshly in the heart. Let us be and remain open to this self-welcoming self. Let us happily inquire, who am I? With a meditation that is not depending on bodily posture or on thoughts or time or place, but simply, naturally, effortlessly abiding in the self as self, one with Mani Mama, absorbed in Arunachala. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Carlos. Now, Leena Gurunath is going to chant.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I'll chant Nirvana Shatakam by Adi Shankara. Manobuddhyahankara chitta ninaham na cha shrotra jivhe na cha ghrana netre na cha vyoma bhumir na tejo na vayu chidananda rupah shivoham shivoham na cha prana sangyo na vai pancha vayu na va sapta dhatu न वा पंचकोशः न वाक्पाणिपादं न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मे द्वेषरागौ न मे लोभमोहौ मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्मः न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुत्वाच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां न चासङ्गतं नैव मुक्तिर्न मेयः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Leena Gurunath. Now, Dr. Anand Ramanan, President of Sri Ramanasramam, is going to talk now.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Greetings to everyone from the Ashram. Friends, today we are celebrating the life of my uncle Mani Chittappa. He was the first child to be born out of the 7 children of my grandparents in Tiruvannamalai. And 83 years later, he merged into Arunachala, the holy feet of Bhagavan, on July 19th. As recounted by many devotee friends, Chittappa was a kind, thoughtful, resourceful, and a very practical man. For the past 37 years, his constant, gentle presence has provided a rock-like foundation and stability for the ashram. 2 years ago, he ensured a seamless transition of the leadership by his firm support in the background. Appa was very proud of an incident where Chittappa was able to come with a solution which stumped many devotees. They were trying to come up with a caption for an article where there were 2 pictures of Bhagavan side by side, the famous 21-year-old and probably one in his 60s. And Mani Chittappa just walked in and said, he gave the caption, which was accepted and published. And it's quote, somewhat, I can't have the exact words, but it says, the sage with ageless wisdom over 2 different ages. And this is typical of Chittappa, a man of few words and full of action. Personally, we had a good time as an uncle, where he used to read us books, and personally, I learned a lot of cricket from him. Like his brothers and sisters, he had fond memories of his childhood growing up in the ashram under Sri Bhagavan's watchful gaze, which shaped the destiny of his life. Friends, his transition to the ashram service, a remarkable service of 37 years in 1985, is itself an amazing story of Sri Bhagavan's grace. What appears as a devastating personal event in one's life over time turns into the most joyful, life-changing experience of one's life. The proof of the Guru's grace. Around 1983, Manichitapa developed the recurrent episodes of colitis, which, going to several doctors, appeared to be untreatable. And he transitioned from an executive life in Bombay to Tiruvannamalai with a young family. And needless to say, within a few months, the colitis, which appeared life-threatening at some stage, was totally cured. Manichitapa used this rebirth in Sri Bhagavan to serve the ashram with renewed vigor on a daily basis. We heard stories of his personal touch, and many devotees were helped by Chittapa in many of their personal problems, both in and away from the ashram. I'm getting letters and emails every day, where even during the last week of his life, he has been in telephonic touch or through his favorite medium these days, WhatsApp, sending encouraging messages, staying in touch with various devotees. His was a constant presence in the ashram. It took a lot to keep him away from the ashram. Of course, we know how much he loved plants, trees, and animals, sometimes more than even humans, I would say. Friends, this is the year of the centenary celebration of Sri Ramanasramam. And the theme that we have is Sri Ramanasramam, the next 100 years and beyond and for eternity. We will all miss Manichitapa's physical guidance as that of Appa. Along with Appa, he will be an inspirational force for this celebration. I would today reassure all our friends, the ashram will continue the same tradition established by my grandparents, my father, and dear Manichitapa, of this constant personal service to the devotees. Ramanashramam will always be the devotees' home away from home, their second home, or maybe their first home. It will always be the place for salvation with a personal touch, with Bhagavan being our father and Matar Bhuteshwara as the motherly principle. Friends, one constant feature in life is change. However, we, the lucky ones, we have Bhagavan's teachings, his grace as our rock-like foundation. We will not be afraid of any change. As my friend from DC, Ravi Iyer, had said, ashram is evolving and growing. Bhagavan's teachings has spread to every corner of the world. However, the core values will always remain the same. It will be distilled to the smallest source and the basic principle that it will always be the place of sadhana where devotees will come first. As Sunita had said, Chittapa has merged in Bhagavan's feet, a very contented man, a proud father, and a prouder grandfather. The incident is shocking. However, such incidents should force us to dig down within our hearts, which Bhagavan ever urges us to do, to uncover the root uncertainty that comes as a matter of course in every human birth, namely the certainty of death and the uncertainty of the time of death. Friends, may we all reaffirm today our lives to the constant, sincere practice of Bhagavan's teachings and attain self-realization. This would be our tribute that we pay to Mani Chittappa and to the countless devotees and people who have been graced the ashram from Bhagavan's days. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Anand Ramanan. Now, Ramanan Subramanian is going to talk. He is Mani Anna's son.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. It is difficult for me to talk about my father, but I will attempt to say a few words on Mohan's request. The outpouring from devotees has been overwhelming. The love and devotion that they have expressed has been very moving. My father touched many lives, but never spoke about it. Now devotees are coming forth and sharing their stories and how he guided them, how he helped them, how he welcomed them and protected them. For me, Appa was more than a father. He was my mentor and guide. And for the last few years, he took on the role of my mother as well. He liked to lead by example and lived a disciplined life. Both he and my mother would rise early, have their tea, read from Bhagavan's Nanyar and other spiritual texts each morning. He would then do some exercise, bathe, and get to the ashram by 6:30 a.m. for the milk offering. Appa would have his breakfast in the ashram and then work till 12 p.m. and then return home for lunch. Appa and Amma would eat lunch together and then he would rest for an hour and go back to the ashram by 2 p.m. In later years, he would go to the ashram by 3. He would be there till 8 p.m. and then return home for dinner. This was his routine 7 days a week for 365 days. He rarely left Tiruvannamalai, and when he came over to be with Shanti or me, he would always hasten to go get back. His persistent dedication to serving the ashram and the devotees was the very core of his being. The day before he left the body, he had gone to the ashram and spent the morning there. He hadn't been to the ashram for a few days prior to that. In our daily telephone conversation, he shared that his visit to the ashram that morning was extremely heartwarming and satisfying. He told me, Ramanan, Umba Triptiya irundhathu. I could feel it in his voice. It was full of love and compassion. When my parents visited me in the States, in the US, they loved to visit the redwoods. It was a pilgrimage, and we would go spend an afternoon with these giants. During the weekday, the forest is almost deserted, and many a time we would find ourselves quite alone. We would sit and meditate, do a parayanam, take a long walk and return. They loved being in the presence of these ancient trees that are thousands of years old. It was always a highlight of the trip. During the first visit to the US, we visited New York and stayed at the ashram. Dennis was the gracious host. Along with Dennis, we drove up to Niagara. En route, we spent a night with Jim, Dennis's brother, and Fran at their home in Franklin, and then stayed with Professor Ram Desai in Buffalo. While my parents proceeded to Toronto to meet with the Shastris, I stayed back with Dennis at his parents' house in Tonawanda. Everyone we met and spent time with treated us like a member of their family. And while the gatherings were simple, the heart connection ran deep. Appa seemed to naturally make this deep heart connection with devotees from all over the world and from all walks of life. When they visited me in California, there was so much warmth and happiness and joy that they shared with the devotees. During their last 3 trips to California, we always spent a weekend with Joan and Matthew Greenblatt. The meetings were so joyful and happy. They would often reminisce about the early days of Arunachala Ashrama and the Nova Scotia Ashram and share stories about old devotees. We will miss our father dearly, but take great solace in that he was doing something that he loved till the very end, which is to serve the ashram and the devotees. It was an exemplary life of great beauty and dedication. Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Thank you, Ramanan, for sharing at this difficult time. Thank you. Now, Sri Kumar Krishnamurti is going to chant the Arunachala Pancharatnam.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya. Karuna Purna Sudabdha Kabalitakana Vishwarupa Kiranavalya. Arunachala Paramatman Aruno Bhavachittakanja Suvikashaya. Tvai Arunachala Sarvam Bhutva Stitva Pralinameta Chitram. Hridyaha Mityatmataya Nritta Sibhoste Vadanti Hridayam Nama. Ahamite kuta yate tanvishtanta pravishtayatyamaladiya avagamya swam rupam samyat Arunachala divabdhav tyaktva vishayam bahyam ruddha pranena ruddha manasantastvam dhyayan pashyati yogi diritam Arunachala mahiyante Tvayarpita manasa tvam pashyan sarvam tabakritataya satatam bhajate ananya pritya sajayatya sukhe magnaha Srimad Ramana Maharshi darshanam Arunachalasya devagira panchamakarya gita vrattam tidamo vanishadam Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya.
Thank you, Sri Kumar. Now, Asha Uni is going to chant the Sharanagati.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Sharanagati Sharanagati Un Para Sharanagati Ini puhatunaida Ini puhatunaida Yeda Ni puhala Sharanagati Smaranagati pala Arunachalanirai Ramana Smaranagati pala Arunachalanirai Ramana Karuna Varuna Sri Ramana Karuna Varuna Sharanagati Taruna Idu Andro Un Karunai Nokave Tarunam Idu Andro Un Karunai Nokave Kala Haranama Kidil Ha 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 Yen Seven Kala Haranama Kidil Ha Ha Yen Seven உலகின் தும்பை நீக்கி இன்பை அளிக்க என் அன்பா உலகின் தும்பை நீக்கி இன்பை அளிக்க என் அன்பா இன்னம் பராமுகம் என்னால் தாளாதையா ஸ்ரீவேதியா இன்னோ பராமுகம் என்னால் தாளாதையா ஸ்ரீரமணா சரணாகதி சரணாகதி
Thank you, Asha. Now, Peter Fell is going to chant the Vedas, ending with Nakarmana. Peter?
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Gananam Tva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anashranbandhoti Visita Sadanam Om Shri Mahaganadhipataye Namaha Om Devim Vachamachanayanta Devastam Vishvarupah Pashavo Vadanti Sano Mandresha Murjantuhana Dhenurvakasma Nupasushutaitu Shri Mahasarasvatye Namaha Harihi Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinapatitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan Atma Guhayan Nihitosya Janto Tamakratum Pashyati Mita Shokodhatuh Prasadan Mahimanamisham Sapta Pranah Prabhavanti Tasmat Sapta Rachichas Samithas Sapta Jihvah Sapta ime loka yeshu charanti prana guhashayan nihitas sapta sapta atas samudra girayascha sarve smatsyantate sinthavas sarvarupa atascha vishva oshadhayo rasatcha enaisha bhutastishthyantaratma Brahma Devanam Patadih Kavinam Rushirvipranam Mahisha Mraganam Siena Grudhrana Gusvadhitarvana Nagum Somah Pavitramatye Tide Bhandu Ajamekam Lohita Shukra Krishnam Bahvim Prajam Janayanti Gum Sarupam Ajohye ko jushamano nushete jahat yenam bhukta bhoga majonyahat agum sassuchi shadvasurantariksh sadhota peti shatati thirduro nasat nrshadva rasaturtha sadvyo masatabja goja rutaja atrija rutam bruhat ghrutam mimikshide ghrutamasya yonar ghrute shruto ghrutumuvasya dhama Anushvadhamavaha matayasva svaha krutam vrishabhavakshi havyam samudra durnir madhumagum udaratu bhagum shuna samamratatvamanatam ghrutasya namaguhyam yatasti jihva devana mamrutasya nabhihi vayam nama prabravama ghrutenasmin yajne dharayama namodhihi Upabrahma shrunavachasya manam chatushrangavanit kaura etat chatvari shangatrayo asya pada dve shirushe saptahastaso asya tridha baddho vrishabho roraviti mahodevo martyagum avivesha tridha hitam panibhirgyokyamanam kavite vaso krutaman vavindan Indra ekagum surya ekam chachalate nate kagyasvadhaya nishtatakshuho yo devanam prathamam purastad vishvatiyo rudro maharshihi hiranyagarbham paschatajayamanagum salo devashubhaya smrutya samyunaktu yasmat param na paramasti kinchid yasman nani yo nachchayo asti kashchitan Vraksha iva stabdhati vitishthate kaste netam purnam purushena sarvam na karmana na prajaya dhane na tyage naike amratatvamanaso parena nakam nihitam guhayam vibhrajate tatyadayo vishanti vedanta vijnana sunishchitartha sanyasa yoga jataya shuddha sattva te brahmaloke tu parantakaare paramratat parimucyanti sarve tahram vipapam parameshma bhutam yat pundarikam puramadhyasaggastham tatrapi tahram gaganam vishakastasmini yatantastarupasitavyam yo vedado svarah prokto vedante cha pratisthitah tasya prakriti linasya yah parasya maheshvara.
Namaskar all fellow devotees. What an event for a man, Mani Anna, who believed that serving Bhagavan's devotees is serving Bhagavan himself. And also we read a little bit today in the talks, he was the embodiment of Nishkama Seva. I don't want to add anything more. With so many devotees giving the different facets of Mani Anna. With this, we come to the end of this memorial satsang for Sri Mani Anna. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.